Millennials have had a tough time, to say the least, during COVID. You know, they've been a lot of shifts happening. Rental market's been shaking, job insecurities, working from home, or am I going back to the office? And my God, if I ever afford a property. So I want to talk about if millennials will ever own real estate again, starting with an article from the Star called "I'm a Millennial with a Good Income. In Toronto's housing market, all I can afford is a parking space or storage locker." And I also, which sucks by the way, but I also don't want people who aren't millennials to think, it's a millennials. That's a them problem. That's not my problem. It is. You're going to hear why in this discussion. With so many stories covering Ontario's red hot housing market, I wanted to know what my chances at home ownership are as an adult under 30 with a good income who already lives on their own in the city. They're already renting. I can already afford it. No? Well, now that we're allowed back to the zoo, maybe millennials should just build houses like penguins, right? How, you ask? It glues it together. To all my American listeners, no, we don't have penguins. No. But yes, we pay $1 million for igloos around here. But she asked, so this reporter in this story asks a mortgage broker for a response. What do you think I can qualify for? You know, what do we think? In fact, I know the real estate market. I'm writing about it. I'm a news article. I don't know much about this person, but whatever. It's a common story. So she said, you're probably going to laugh. This is a mortgage broker, right? Telling me I may be able to obtain approval for around 150 grand. A mere 23% of the average cost of a condo in Toronto's market, according to Treb in the April 2021 condo report. So she's like, all right, 150,000. Let's search MLS to see what my options are. And she says, I can barely even find a garage. Within Toronto city limits, 21 listings appear on realtor.com or .ca under 150 approval. Several, as we know, there's a big trend. People put things for $1 listings. So you take all of those out and how many we got? We got 8. We got 8 listings. And each of them is a parking space or a locker. That's it. They range in prices from $5,500 to $45,000. While they fall into my price range, the options lack one thing high on my list of criteria, my must-haves. A wall or walls. You ungrateful millennial. Take what you can get, right? Just be glad you can afford a parking spot. In fact, in Hong Kong, I saw that there was the most expensive parking lots sold for 1.6 million. New record. 45,000. Come on. At least you've got a place to bring up your little penguin girlfriend back to, yeah? Net fish and chill. But if I'm willing to leave Ontario completely, that's her question. I can find affordable housing in other provinces, right? They say clearly $150,000 is not going to cut it if I want to stay close to work. And here's the irony. And to be honest with you, I wasn't going to include this article until I read this last part. I thought this is fantastic because I don't think anyone's talking about it from this perspective. Here's the irony. My monthly mortgage payment would work out to less than my current rent payments. There is no regulation in the rental market that takes affordability into the equation. I don't have to qualify to rent, but you put all these qualification measures in place. What a good point. Quote, all the stress test is doing is basically kicking out a bunch of people from the housing market, she said. They have no chance to get into the housing market because of these really strict qualifying rules. Does that sound like somebody you know? That's what I've been saying. First-time homebuyers are getting beat up by the stress test. But it's interesting because meanwhile, they say, those with means to afford properties, you guys that already have homes in this red-hot market, quote, are not impacted by the stress test increase at all. Remember how they asked they asked me too, these reporters, what do you think about the stress test? What's it going to do? It's not going to affect a whole lot of people. It's not going to affect affordability in your city, but it's important for first-time homebuyers to know because they're the ones taking all of the weight of this, right? Quote, I think that what this is doing is creating the divide for the haves and the haves not. Interesting how that works. But the increasing stress test has marginalized first-time buyers, namely millennials, let's say, including millennials. On the bright side, you don't need to qualify to rent. So you just have to do that. Yeah, is that the solution? Oh, well, I'm not suggesting that we create a barrier to people to be able to rent. I'm saying how crazy is that somebody can afford rent, but they can't afford to purchase if that purchase is actually cheaper than it is to rent. But just because you want to own a home doesn't mean you get to, right? Even if you love telling jokes about penguins and ostriches, they don't really fly around here. But here's the kicker, guys. This is why it matters. This is why it matters. They'll migrate south. What if they leave? She talked about going east, right? But what if they leave? What if there's a place, a better place, greener pastures, More affordable housing. Well, there is, because the U.S. poses a serious threat to enticing Canadians' skilled workers to move south. This is a Financial Post article, and this is the first time I'm hearing about this, which is why I wanted to talk about it as a subject today, because I think we would be ignorant to ignore what's going on south of the border. The New York Times obtained a 46-page draft blueprint called the DHS Plan to Restore Trust in Our Legal Immigration System. This is the name of the blueprint. But the Joe Biden administration is making a 180 on the country's existing immigration policy, aiming to make it both significantly cheaper and easier for people to move to the U.S. Wait a minute. So a change in administration is changing the immigration policy of the states? Absolutely. Don't think Canadians won't move if they don't need to, or if they do need to, right? Don't think that we're so locked up. We aren't stuck in zoos like zoo animals here. We're free to go. Unlike a Quebec zoo with their baguettes in a cage. Because they're bred in captivity. I'm sorry. I'm still a little salty from the whole Leafs playoff run. But anyways, in particular, we see three factors that may be just enough to tip the scales in convincing Canadians to make such a move when these changes come into effect. What's terrifying to me is there very legitimate arguments for moving to the U.S. Don't get me wrong. Toronto's the greatest city in the world. But if we can't afford to live here, maybe the U.S. is a valid option for three reasons. Number one, more opportunities. Canada appears to be going all in on non-producing assets called real estate, with residential investments accounting for a whopping 54% of GDP growth in Canada, and as we mentioned before, over 10% of the overall GDP. Meanwhile, other economies like the U.S. are seeing the benefits of diversifying their economies into highly competitive, disruptive sectors like technology, robotics, automation, and renewables. It feels like just yesterday, Toronto in the GTA was a place for technological innovation. Could that be changing course because we look at housing as the be all and end all? Reason number two, lower taxes. The Biden administration may be increasing tax rates, but is at a level that wouldn't apply to most Canadians considering a move south because we pay so much already here. Income tax rates are similar across provinces, whereas in the States, different states have different tax rules, and some have little to no income tax at all, which is sweet. Looking ahead, we think material tax hikes are on the horizon. This is the other flip side in Canada. How can you not expect to see tax hikes coming down the pipes? I think you'd be ignorant to not think that the Liberals will finally get their much desired majority government, which could happen, leading to Bank of Canada having to pay back their record-breaking deficits through how? Taxation. Maybe now's the chance to jump ship. Take all the benefit of CERB. Maybe I take my opportunity to get out before I got to pay that all back and my future generations do, which brings us to number three, housing. It's cheaper homes. The city of Hamilton, right? City of Hamilton, which has long been thought of like kind of your next market that's relatively affordable, well, is now more expensive than Los Angeles. Think about that for a second. Many younger, highly skilled Canadians are simply priced out of their home markets when it comes to owning a home. But that is not an issue in most U.S. cities. It certainly helps that the Canadian dollar as well is a top performer in the G7 this year, thereby reducing the foreign exchange hit while offering a chance to get paid long-term in the world's reserve currency, the US dollar. Maybe this is your chance to jump across. Incredible arguments in favor of why someone would say, you know what, to hell with Canada. It's way too cold in this hell. But treat them kindly or they'll get up and go, right? Just ask the crocodile who left her husband because he had a reptile dysfunction. But we worry that a skyrocketing, this is their conclusion to this article. It summarizes it great. We worry that a rocketing Canadian dollar, an out-of-control housing market, massive tax hikes to fund the Liberals' Build Back Better agenda, and an immigration-friendly U.S. administration might just be the catalyst Canadians need to seek warmer jurisdictions.